Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Office Hours Global. We answer your media and production questions 7 days a week. Today, got something special for you. Andy Carluccio and Jonathan Cocatillo from Zoom are here to share some exciting new things. They've got a little, I personally got a little demo of this on the last day of the show, done an NAB. It's so cool. So I'm really pumped that we get to kick it off on a Friday. Andy, Jonathan, welcome to the show.
So much for having us, and it's great to see everybody again. We're super excited to be here to talk about our Zoom Graphics Toolkit, which, as you said, we announced at NAB, and it's just been, the feedback so far has just been amazing. We're really excited to talk a little bit more about that today.
Yeah, so let's take a look. I think we've got a little demo.
Yeah, sounds good. So just to set this up, one of the things my team's been really focused on is giving you more control over your events, both from a management perspective and over the look and feel. So over the years, we've given you Zoom OSC that lets you have more direct control over the controls inside of a Zoom meeting, so you can manage it from something like a Stream Deck. We gave you ZoomISO that gives you the individual video and audio feeds that compose a Zoom meeting so that you can put it back together like we are today in a branded and controlled way. Last year at NAB, we announced Tiles, which lets you make a customized gallery view that you set all the features and controls for so it fits into your event. And that left kind of one major area for us, which was graphics. And, when I look at studios, I see, chat windows popped out and dragged over to TVs and the chat scrolling up that way, right? And I think there's a better way to do that. And in the modern kind of landscape of production, a lot of these graphic systems are managed by the web. So they're browser-based technology working around HTML and CSS. And so what we've done is created a toolkit that bridges Zoom data, chat, Q&A, polls, things like that, and makes it accessible from HTML and CSS programming. So you can create these beautiful customized graphics that are responsive and interactive with your Zoom data. We're going to turn it over to Jonathan, and he'll walk you through a couple of high-level features on the app, and then we're looking forward to taking your questions.
Awesome. Thanks. Hey, Jonathan. Good morning.
Hey, good morning. Definitely looking forward to sharing what we have here today. So I've got a few slides to go through, just showing some general overview of the app and some concepts to discuss on this. Again, in the interest of time, we're just going to focus on some high level and get straight to the questions as soon as we can. So please get those in. Okay, so just talking through what this app is in a little more detail. So as Andy mentioned, we're calling this app a toolkit, a graphics toolkit. And to really emphasize that, we designed this app with two distinct personas in mind, at least two, right? So, we primarily intend this app in the early stages to be most useful for users who want full customization of the Zoom data and how it is displayed in HTML. For this reason, the app itself does provide full access to editing the HTML and the CSS of the graphics directly, giving you powerful capabilities through our templating system to directly edit and adjust the styles you need to match your brand graphics. But with that said, we do also have a series of presets and the ability for you to just select a graphic and get off and ready to go with just that graphic that you desire, tweaking some colors, making some adjustments. We do have a designer system that gives you controls over that without needing to learn the code, without needing to be a developer. So again, this app is targeted at two personas, but the toolkit component behind this it represents the flexibility that it provides, giving you full options for customization. So just to go through a little bit about the interface to expect and some of the graphic types we'll support. So there are several tabs to the interface. I won't go through everything here, but this here is the editor tab where you can see we have live previews of the HTML graphics that you are creating, in this case a chat scroll, along with some parameters that you can adjust. Or if you want to jump straight into the code, you have access to built-in code editor. As you make changes to the code, you'll see that represent live on the graphic. So a lot of customization options deeply built into the app right there. We have additional moderation built into the app for things like chat, questions, and polls that allow you to read that data from the Zoom meeting or webinar, but then do an extra layer of moderation to curate and say, I like these messages, I want those to be highlighted as favorites, or I like this question, let's put this as the lower third graphic. Or in the case of polls, after a poll has been answered, you can then show a pie chart, a bar graph of that poll.
So when you're in a webinar or a Zoom event, and it's utilizing all of the back end stuff that's already part and parcel built into those. So the polls, the chat, the questions. When you're utilizing that overall Zoom to facilitate that event, then all of those things in the back end are just coming to this without really any setup. If they're adding this to the meeting, is that accurate?
That's correct. Yes. So To be specific, this is what we are going to be supporting at launch. Chat from the Zoom meeting or webinar. And this includes multiple ways to present that chat data. So the most common way is going to be a scrolling chat effect with some animation too. So a nicely animated live scrolling chat. And we have some other parameters you can tune, such as rate limits if the chat is moving fast, or you can hide and show certain elements. Let's say, for example, you don't care about the timestamp, or you don't care about chat replies. You just want to show the top level chat messages. You can filter and control how that's displayed in this graphic. We also have chat highlights. So what that will show is just a single message at a time that you curate through the moderation interface. So if you say, I want to, throughout my event, show certain messages that I want to put in front of the audience as a lower third, you can do that as well. Question works very similar. We have a question scroll and a question highlight. Similar functions, just pulling from the Q&A feature built within Zoom meetings and Zoom webinars. Poll results, very similar. So you launch the poll within the Zoom meeting or webinar, and the participants use that native Zoom experience. Currently, in Zoom meetings and webinars, you can share the results back into the meeting, but it's just a side panel that gives a list of the results in a very utilitarian way. With this app, you can represent that as a beautiful graph, a beautiful poll, and customize the colors and the styling to put that onto your graphic directly. We have reaction support as well. So this is that little emoji fountain that you might see in webinar with the floating emojis coming up. We have caption support. So this takes the automatic transcriptions, or the captions rather, from a Zoom meeting, including attribution. So if you have multiple speakers talking back and forth, it'll show their profile picture and their line of dialogue. And this also includes auto translation if you select a language. We have name tag, which will show the active speaker name tag. We're going to be expanding this concept in the future. And then we also allow just custom graphics, whether using Zoom data in a custom way or just adding your own HTML and CSS without using the Zoom data. We do support that as well.
And then as much as we all are excited to get to play with the tool, the other thing that's exciting, whenever Liminal touches anything, the documentation that comes with it, it's like, these are all the cool things that now you get to build with this foundation. Is always, that's my favorite part. It's really cool. We've got some questions already coming in. But Alex, why don't you kick us off with the first one?
Yeah, so how do you get it into a Zoom meeting? So I know that's a really basic question, but like if I want to add graphics to the Zoom meeting, what are the first steps?
Yeah, so think about it in 3 steps. The first step is pulling in the data from Zoom to create the graphic, and that's what Jonathan was just discussing, those different data types. That comes into the HTML and CSS layer, and then you have the ability to output those as individual web pages. So one of the things that's unique about this app is that we don't force you to combine or merge all of the graphics into one output page. You actually get one page per output type. And then you can bring that into any sort of switcher or playout system. And then you can pass that back into Zoom. So if you want that to be an overlay on top of your camera, you could do a transparent web page overlay in Ecamm or OBS or any media management pipeline. Or if you have a larger switcher, they can often ingest these web pages as well. What's so cool about them is that they have built-in transparency as part of the fact that they're a web page. So you can work with that without having to key it in many software. If you need to key it, you can set the background to a chroma green, and then you can key it in your switcher.
And then this just joins the Zoom meeting, and it starts to grab onto, it's given permissions and starts to grab onto the data.
Exactly. Just like our other apps, it joins as a client in the meeting that you can pilot with the Zoom user interface. You can bring it into breakout rooms, you can move it around, and then, yes, it starts pulling out that data and sending it into the graphics pipeline.
And for the permissions, we recommend making it a host or a co-host so that it has access to chat and question moderation capabilities. Otherwise, it'll just view the chat without the moderation.
Got it.
All right, and Chris, you had one more thing before we hop into the audience questions?
Yeah, you said this is a self-hosted, web server. Is the install, like, do you install an app and it generates all that, or is this you have to set up your own web server and load the program appropriately?
It's very similar to BitFocus Companion. So when you download it, you download an application that runs the web server on your computer, Mac or PC, because it's based around browser technology, which is cross-platform, thanks to things like the Chromium engine, right? So you're going to download an application that will run natively on your computer. You're going to set up, what network interface you want it to run on, and then it will pop open the user interface in a browser, and that's where you'll do all your interaction.
And just adding to that as well, one of the reasons why we decided to do it this way, I guess there's two main reasons. Number one is it allows you to do a certain level of headless operation. This graphics server can be a lightweight system stashed somewhere that you don't need to directly access while generating these assets. But the other reason is that this allows, if you run it using your local network, you can then have external collaborators simultaneously using these different pages. So you can have different graphic systems accessing the pages and pulling in the outputs, but even the moderation pages will synchronize between different clients. So you can have a chat moderator sitting at one station, and then you can have on the same network, you can have a graphics operator, a poll moderator. All of those can be viewing the same server through different client web pages.
Yeah, and I'm excited about using this in the cloud as well with VPNs or Cloudflare tunnels, because they're just these web addresses that you can pick up and then you can make it available to remote operators as well. When we use this app for Zoomtopia, that's what we did. We ran Cloudflare tunnels and then we gave remote authenticated access to other team members to manage things like moderation and control.
Thank you. We've had a couple of questions already roll in, so we're going to take advantage of having such great brains on the panel with Jonathan and Andy. Let's get into the first one, Alexander.
First one's coming from Ronny Hofsøy in Tromsø, Norway. Can Zoom Graphics Toolkit have multiple different simplified GUI interfaces for different roles? Let's say a question manager and another one for the social media manager.
Andy?
This is our plan to have a couple different outputs for different types of roles. So the interface that Jonathan was showing before, that's going to be the main operator interface where you have access to many different things. One of the things that's interesting about that page is, we didn't talk about too much, is the way that the code editing works, where in addition to being able to write the HTML and CSS, you can write a JSON schema that will create customized controls for that graphic. So not only are you programming the visual behavior of the graphic, you're programming what the operator interface to that graphic will look like with our own sliders and color pickers and things like that you can invoke to modify certain variables to help simplify the entire experience. And then to the question, being able to have like a dedicated page at Zoomtopia a couple of years ago, we had an iPad interface that the host could walk on stage with that showed the favorited questions that were coming in, and they could tap on them to indicate they wanted to answer them, and it would play it out on screen. So that's certainly something that we're planning for, different roles and different pages that have simplified or locked down access, maybe even touch-friendly optimizations, things like that.
And then full import-export with those JSON files so that as you're moving from event to event, you can keep building your customized library of your specific setups?
Exactly right. You can import or export the graphics, including their customized control interfaces, all as one package.
And I'll share this as well just to show what that moderation interface looks like. This is still a work in progress, but the idea is that we provide within the app a 2-column interface that can allow you to favorite certain messages and then highlight them later. While this is very useful within the app, like Andy mentioned, we are looking at something that's more touch-friendly and designed for external moderators, but it'll be tied into and based on the same interaction model, just with more restrictions and a simpler interface.
Yep. And the other thing I'd mention is that this is all tied back to the Zoom data. So if you have existing moderation workflows that you use to moderate the chat and polls and all of that in Zoom, this app will automatically follow it, because anything that happens in Zoom happens back in this app as well.
Next question.
This one's coming from Guy Cochran in Seattle, Washington. What kind of crazy workarounds did people do before Zoom Graphics Toolkit?
Andy?
There are a couple things that come to mind. The one I see most often is, like I said at the beginning, they'll pop out different panels of the Zoom user interface and literally drag them onto TVs or other screens in order to show them there. I've even seen some people try to chroma key out the white background of that interface to get the overlay just to show up that way. The other thing that we've seen is the use of Zoom OSC as a means of getting the data out into a pipeline. But the problem with that approach is that, Zoom OSC operates at the UDP layer, whereas these HTML graphics, all of that exists in kind of the web layer. So there was some manual labor involved in sort of opening up a port for that data to flow into and then converting it. So people did quite a bit of work. I even did some of this in the early days with Isadora, where I'd pull in those OSC messages and try to render it out as an NDI feed. And it's harder to do it that way when clearly there are graphic systems that are optimized around web graphics off the bat. So making our data immediately compatible with it should make this a lot easier.
And to be specific as well, for those more advanced users of this, not only have we made the data more accessible through that front end, so you don't have to spin up your own server and implement your own web layer, what we've done is add a lot of helper functions and templating structure that that uses our experience working with Zoom data. So you'll see when you look into our developer documentation, we have helpers that automatically shorten first names and last names, or that presents Zoom avatar profile pictures. Things that we know are commonly done with Zoom data, we simplified for developers so you don't have to go through that process.
Yeah, I got a little peek at some of the code blocks, and the way that the variable structure makes it so that normal people can edit this. You don't have to be a deep programmer to start to understand how to take those pieces and put them together. Next question.
This one's from Douglas Carmichael. Would there be any sort of WYSIWYG editor that could work with the toolkit?
Andy?
Yeah, so I'd love to show this through Jonathan, but the main idea is that, yes, like you actually see the HTML and the CSS blocks, and then right next to it is an interactive interface where you can preview it. I think, Jonathan, maybe you had it on slide 1, that WYSIWYG interface, but the idea of it is that right there inside of the app, you can customize on the left side. That's the JSON designer schema right there that has the exposed controls. But there's another tab next to it where you can actually directly edit the HTML and CSS. And on the right-hand side, you will see that graphic updated real time as you program it, including sample data. So you can run simulated data and chat messages to preview how this is going to look when you're outside of a meeting to make it possible.
Well, and because the code is completely exposed, you could also use something like ChatGPT or something else to write the code for you, right?
Yeah, that's been a really interesting experiment for me. So we've written over 70 pages of documentation for this app, both between the user manual and the programmer's guide. And one of the reasons that we were so verbose and so heavy with examples in those documents was that we've actually been practicing uploading our documentation to an LLM, asking it to implement a graphic for us, and then seeing what it gets right and what it gets wrong, and then reinforcing the documentation on the areas that it got wrong, so that in our first attempt, we are able to get a result that you can actually copy paste into the app and have it work. So just the other day, when we were finalizing up our first draft of the docs, I had a request for a gradient purple black lower third with a blue border and a drop shadow to show a chat highlight. And I uploaded the 2 PDFs for our documentation and those instructions. And I got back HTML and CSS that I copied directly into the editor of the app. And on the first attempt, it did exactly what I wanted it to do. But again, we have been intentional about this. We didn't just get lucky. It took several revisions of the documentation to get it to the point where it understood how to access the Zoom data, how to trigger our animations, how to use our helper functions. And so now we feel like that's actually a real path. Yeah.
Writing manuals for LLM, I think, is next level. Like it's you're actually writing the manual for the LLM. Yeah, it's great.
What we really need is to put some custom instructions over an API call directly to 4.0 or 03 or one of these other ones, where you're typing in what you want for the graphic right within your interface, and then it has those pre-built instructions that have your documentation in there, so that you get a really narrow focus. The Zoom Graphics Toolkit assistant. Next question.
Next question is from Ronny Hofsoy in Tromsø, Norway. Can you show different examples of poll results? How many different graphs could be utilized?
Andy.
In our first round, we have bar graphs and pie charts, but we're planning to expand this to a lot more formats. Polls is going to be one of the graphic assets that's going to take more time for us, because there are so many different types of polls in Zoom. Rank choice, multi-selection, all of those different types of polls. You might want to represent that data in different ways. We have a couple of examples of those polls on our website, where you can see a bar chart that slides in from the left-hand side and a pie chart that kind of grows and spins out to create the graphic as well. So those are going to be some of the built-in examples, but there are others that we're hoping to add as presets in the near future.
Next question.
JJ McKenna in Scabo, California. Could an operator modify the layer height for the different types of graphics like one would with H2R Graphics?
Go ahead, Jonathan.
So not within our app directly, in the sense that the separate layers that are output are separate web URLs, and then within the production renderer that you load it into, you can then set the order of those within that program, layers and so on. So you don't need to do that within our app. It is possible to, within the CSS for each individual graphic, to adjust the components on that side using standard CSS layering as well for Z-depth. But you don't need to do that because we output separate layers for each graphic. load it up into your graphics tool of your choice, and then you can set the layers that way.
Next question.
Ronny Hofsø in Tromsø, Norway. Is it only the person starting the software that needs a license, and all other users managing the graphics can access the web GUI regardless of Zoom license? Can it be controlled? Who can access what?
Andy?
Yes, that's right. So you log into the actual hosting application with your Hub host account, and that will allow it to join meetings at that point. But then any of the users of the different URLs would be able to leverage the app. And then access control is interesting. We have a couple of ideas for how to do that. But in the beginning, I would use network shaping to control whether you want it to be available just on the local host, to anybody on the private IP, or on some sort of VPN address that you give access to. And again, we've done a lot of access control via Cloudflare tunnels because you can set an allow list for two-factor logins. So you can put it behind a login page, and then you can have somebody sign into it with an email, and you can have on the back end an allow list of emails to access those pages. So those work nicely together for access control.
And is licensing going to similar to the other liminal apps, where if you're in with the sessions and events and you're a Hub host, then you have access to all of the liminal apps?
Yep, all the apps, unlimited devices via the Zoom Events Hub. Yep.
Thank you. Next question.
From JJ McKenna in Scabo, California. Any chance to create these with an alpha channel to capture with NDI?
Andy?
So for this, we've used Softron on the air web link, which will allow us to take in pages that have transparency in them and then output them either to SDI key fill or NDI with alpha channel. We use that for Zoomtopia pretty successfully. And there are other projects in the community that are doing similar things. I think I've heard that there are some things you can do with Casper CG in this space, with the key fill at least. And then I think Tractus has a tool on GitHub for doing NDI with alpha channel that looks pretty interesting. So there's a couple different tools out there that can ingest a web page and then output an actual pixel stream with alpha channel that you can pull into whatever app you or system you want to use.
Next question.
Roscoe Jones in Madison, Indiana. Once the graphics have been built, can they be scheduled to appear, say, every 5 minutes, or a poll at 30 minutes, or are they always triggered manually?
Jonathan?
So currently, they are always triggered manually. The only exception to that would be like the chat scroll, which is a graphic that you put up and it will automatically continue to scroll. But all of the highlights, all of the polls, those must be triggered manually. But this is a good request, and we can look into what that kind of workflow would look like.
The most agile of developments. Live, on air. Next question.
George E. Kennedy Jr. in Washington, D.C., USA. For hybrid meetings that just want to use the service for an in-person meeting, how is it set up?
Andy?
So this dovetails nicely with our hybrid event companion mode in Zoom Events. So what you can do is you can put a QR code up on screen. People can scan it with their personal devices or put in the meeting ID through Zoom Events. And then they'll join the meeting without audio and video from their personal devices, so they can participate in chat, emojis, Q&A systems from their personal devices. And then because all that data is synchronized with the Zoom Q&A and chat systems, the graphics toolkit can then visualize those interactions. So we've used that relatively successfully for our own Zoomtopia event, where we had these breakout theaters. This was more of a hybrid setup, but people in the room could ask questions. It would go to the tablet that the host was holding. They could click on a question, shoot it up on screen, and that would all be synchronized with what the remote audience was seeing through the Q&A panel in Zoom.
Next question.
This question is coming from me. Does this graphics toolkit work with vanilla Zoom meetings and workplace?
Andy?
Again, the idea of it is that it's very similar to how Tiles and ZoomISO work, where it takes content out of Zoom, messes it around a little bit so that you can put it together in a branded or controlled way. And then you take that final output and you can pass that back into Zoom. And with Graphics Toolkit, that's actually probably more feasible than it is with ZoomISO, because you're not worried about like the audio video sync, because it's just data at that point, just an overlay layer. So you could pass that back in as an overlay on your camera, for example. Or you could stream it out to a third-party source. But it's designed, again, it joins the regular meeting, creates customized graphics out of it, and then that's just part of your video stream. So anywhere that you're sending a video stream today with Zoom, you could attach this overlay layer to, and that will be how it participates in the experience.
Next question.
Ronny Hofsø in Tromsø, Norway. Is there support for remote controlling via OSC/companion, or does everything have to be done with keyboard and mouse?
Andy?
In the beginning, everything will be done via the graphics control interfaces. But one of the things that's interesting about the app is that it's, because it's built on web frameworks, it already has an internal WebSocket protocol that allows the front end to connect to the back end. So we foresee that adding an API to this will be relatively straightforward because we already have to have one by necessity. The main reason that we typically don't launch our betas with an API is that we maybe are going to rename certain features or change certain features around. And we don't want to mess around with the developers who are depending on that API in the beginning. So once we figure out and finalize what we want the interface flow to be and how we want it to work, at that point, we would then begin exploring an API for it.
You're saying you've got some pretty sharp OSC guys in the house. Am I hearing you correctly? Next question. This should be the last one that we've got for Zoom.
Andy Kovendorfer in Viera, Florida, USA. Will a Zoom Workplace account allow access to Zoom Graphics and ZoomISO?
Andy?
No, you're going to need to have a hub host account on the Zoom Events platform. So that can be purchased either via Zoom Sessions or Zoom Events license. Subscription and PPA will both work. That will allow you to create a hub. And then once you've created a hub, you can add any accounts from your organization as quote unquote hub hosts. Those hub hosts, you have kind of central management. So for the enterprise, this is really convenient because maybe you have a marketing team and an events team and a couple other people that you want to pull together under that one license rather than licensing each of them individually. So that's why we have this concept of a hub where you add the different accounts. But no, licensing for this app is managed similar to how we have for Tiles and how we're rolling out for OSC and ISO, where you manage it through the hub host role of the Zoom Events platform.
Jonathan, Andy, thank you so much for coming in and sharing this with us. This is very exciting. Whenever your ideas get, the seeds of them get ready to show a little bit, it's like it goes through the office hours incubator of everybody just wants to beat on it and try to do different things. And then we have such a great community here who loves your stuff. And we really appreciate how much care that you're taking to continue to push what's possible to do with this platform. It's very exciting. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having us, and have a great rest of your show.
Feel free to hang around if you want. We've got a lot more show. Now, it's because we were so excited about Zoom, we ended up with a lot of Zoom questions, but we still got a lot of other questions. So if you're in Makana, remember, your votes are going to drive the show today. So you can keep asking questions if you like, but the voting is going to be very important. Also, chat about the questions. And of course, if you don't have access, you can go to officehours.global/join, and then you'll get an email on how to get into Makana, how to get into Discord, all that stuff. But today, make sure you vote. Alexander, let's get into the first regular question.
All right, so jumping to regular questions. This one is coming from Brian Taylor in Washington, D.C. My MacBook appears to be bonding my Wi-Fi and hardwired internet connections. SpeedTest confirms lower bandwidth when separated and significantly higher bandwidth when combined. What gives?
Alex?
I don't know. I have never seen it. Now, it could get to a point where one service was using your bandwidth and different services are using Wi-Fi or wired, but I've never seen it bond them. Bonding requires something typically on the other end to grab onto those things. And so I don't know why it would do that unless you have, it doesn't make any sense unless SpeedTest is doing something on its end to grab onto those. But I've never seen it. I've seen a Mac grab onto the wrong one. I've never seen it grab onto both of them. So it's a conundrum.
Yeah, I'm definitely with Alex on this one. I've seen it disrespect my intended service order, I think is the way I'm going to put it.
Nice. It didn't grab the wrong one. It just ignored you.
You just ignored my request. But it has been doing some funny things where different services are trying to get out through different ways. Like I'll notice when it's connected to an iPhone via hotspot, it's done some interesting behavior. But the other thing that you want to look out for is as you're running additional speed tests, is the server that it's trying to hit changing? Because you remember with the Ookla speed test, it's hitting a specific server and trying to get the round trip and the downloads and other things like that. Jason Beisch actually gave me quite the education on some of the trickery that happens with speed tests. So if you download the Ubiquiti Wi-Fi Man application, you don't need to have the Ubiquiti hardware to run the speed test that's built in there. You may get more realistic results from that tool. Next question.
This one's from Roscoe Jones of Madison, Indiana. The concept of line level refers back to a desired telephone line voltage moving signals between analog gear. Is there a newer standard to transfer signals between digital gear, or does it only matter during A to D conversions?
Hey, Ronnie, what do you think?
I guess everyone knows the old meters, which had an arrow that was moving forth and back, so-called VU meters. Those were back in the analog days, and because of this, equipment that handled analog signals were typical handling signals and measured them in volts. So that is what a VU meter actually is measuring. It's actually a volt on the signal. And nowadays, we still operate with those type of signal levels for speakers or amplifiers, etc. So we are still working with analog signal type, and they are basically in two different type of versions. They are the professional one and the consumer one. The consumer one is around 0.3 volts, and the professional one is around 1.2 something volts. And those are kind of indicators what is the maximum level that a full signal will actually reference to. And then we have the digital world, which has come to stay, and those formats are more like, it's not like digital levels. I will be returning back to that, but that's more like a format type. So you have a lot of different type of formats that are in the digital domain. One of them that we are using a lot is Dante, for instance. And all these signals that are in the digital domain are approaching 0 dB full scale, which is dBFS for short. And that is actually when all the ones have been maxed out. So there is nothing more than 0 dBFS. And when we are converting from analog to digital or back again, we tend to use a reference analog version of this, which is minus 18 dBFS. So when you are ingesting a signal that is kind of full signal in the analog domain, it will tend to end up around minus 18, sometimes at minus 20 in the digital domain. So that is why we always tend to, when you are encoding music or whatever you are encoding, tend to not go over that, and lower than that means that you are having a smaller dB full scale number, let's say 6 or even 2. I have people saying, yeah, but 0 dBFS is the maximum, so let's just encode to 0 dBFS. That will not be the correct way of doing it. Stay around minus 18, maybe minus 16. I know YouTube is around Spotify is around minus 14 as the maximum. So that is how I see this. But this is a difficult field. It could be a minefield. So read up and make sure you have everything correct before you try to do something.
Courtney, anything to add in there?
No, Ronnie covered all the A to D conversion signal levels quite comprehensively. The only thing I might add to that, as far as carrying digital signals across cables, once it has been converted to a digital signal, the voltage level there is around 800 millivolts. I think peak to peak is the standard reference for a digital SDI signal. Let's say an SDI signal is 800 millivolts. And as you add length to a cable or connectors or anything that you interrupt that signal with can cause a couple of dB of drop in that signal level. And as long as there's a differential, since you're just sending ones and zeros, a positive voltage pulse and a 0 voltage pulse or a negative voltage pulse, as long as there's enough differential in there to distinguish that digital pulse from a noise that sneaks into the cable through electromagnetic interference, you can pretty much get that signal out completely accurately at the other end. But if you're running long cable runs, the drop in voltage between 800 millivolts and much lower voltage can cause confusion by the receiver on the other end, which can cause little sparkle things in your digital image, for example, or little pops and clicks in your audio signal. So bear that in mind as you're sending those digital signals around on cables.
Next question.
This one is coming from Dave Brady in New York City, New York. Has anyone on the panel ever considered tinkering with Blackmagic Design's Arduino Shield? What kind of cool builds are possible?
Courtney?
I took a look at this. I have not used it yet. You know, they had a Pi Shield also from Blackmagic. This one is designed, it looks to send embed camera control signals into your return SDI into all of the Blackmagic cameras. So you can build a custom interface and custom controls to control, you know, the camera shading, iris, zoom, all that stuff with just an Arduino board and writing some custom code. So it looks interesting to you tinkerers out there that want to build little custom shaders for each of their cameras using that bidirectional SDI input on most of the higher end cameras on the Ursa series.
Alex?
Yeah, the way that the Blackmagic cameras work, or a lot of them until they started getting these IP connections, was that they would use the VANC data, so line 21, to insert camera controls. And the cameras, they don't know what they are. I mean, they know what they are. They don't know anything about, like, they're not sending commands to a camera. The camera just says, I'm camera 2. If you have two camera 2s named camera 2, they will both take the same instructions. So they're just looking at all the data. All the data is being sent to all the cameras, and the cameras just pick off the one based on what they're there for. The problem is that's all in an SDI area. So if you're trying to build, as Courtney said, you're trying to build a custom controller, you're not going to be able to do that because you can't, like, how do you get it into line 21? So what this did is this allows you to insert those commands into the VANC data, you know, as it goes through to that camera. And it allows for things like Scarhoy. We use these a lot before we really got into more of the Blackmagic stuff. When Scarhoy started coming out with shading units, using these shields was necessary so that we could have their shading controllers without having to go through SDI through their shading controllers. We could just send those commands to it. But you can write anything you want using and there's some sample code. Blackmagic's got a lot of documentation on how to do this, but it allows you to talk to the cameras via their SDI and send it those custom commands. So it's a fun little hacking tool, and it also allows you to integrate with things like the older Scarhoy stuff needed it.
If you're watching this later, or if you just don't want to log into anything, we've got Office Hours, askofficehours.global, which is open 24/7 for you to ask questions. So we've got the QR code right here. You can scan this QR code or go to askofficehours.global. Anytime you think of a question, put in your name, put in your question, and we'll work it in over the next couple shows. Check it out. Next question.
This one's from Harold Williams in Portsmouth. If I pay for ChatGPT, will it write better code? How can I get AI to stop making so many rookie mistakes?
Jesse.
It should write better code, because when you pay for it, you're getting the most advanced models, which in theory should understand what it's doing better and be able to give you back better data. About your other question, how do I stop making AI how do I stop making AI make rookie mistakes? There's no on-off switch for the rookie mistakes. This is a process that's going to take years, and it's an ongoing process of shaving away its misunderstandings. One way that you can contribute to that, however minutely, is by giving feedback on the code that ChatGPT returns to you. So you can tell it what it's getting right and what it's getting wrong, and what you'd like it to change in the next build. And I believe Alex will talk more on the iterate to greatness methods for writing code with ChatGPT.
Alex?
Well, obviously you're holding it wrong. Like that. I don't think that paying for it I think it gets you more volume. I don't think it necessarily gets you more accuracy from ChatGPT or from the other LLMs. There's Ken Jordan has a great post in the chat. He just said to slash the quote unquote rookie error, specify everything: language, version, framework, linting rules, and edge cases. Demand tests. Ask the model to generate unit tests first, then the implementation. Iterate. Feed compiler runtime errors straight back, and require revised code plus an explanation of the defect, and require reasoning, prompt by step-by-step design notes before you accept a line of PHP. Now, what I often do when I'm starting to build something is I don't build a big complex prompt. I really do this one simple thing, and then I add, and I know where I'm going to go like with this, but I'm going to say, okay, now do this, now do this, now add these, now add these, now add this. And I'm slowly building that code up the way I would if I was writing it. I think the biggest mistake I think I see people do when they're doing this is they do ask for a bunch of interacting complex operations in one giant prompt, and the chances of AI doing that well is low. So I find that iterating over a little bit of time is much more effective.
Alexander?
Yeah, and just a thing about ChatGPT, because I recently signed up for it. It doesn't default to the newer models that are being tested that are more advanced and have better reasoning. So just make sure in the drop-down menu that when you're actually trying this to test the different models, for example, like 04 Mini, I find the names very confusing and they don't really explain in the interface. Like, had I not done any research, like I don't know what 04 Mini is, like all the numbers don't really make any sense with the models to me. So it's hard to kind of keep track of which one is more advanced, but you may want to try and select some of those different models like 04 Mini and, run the same query and see if you get better results. In my testing, I have gotten quite a bit better results, better reasoning, more thoughtful responses with the newer models. So definitely test those out as well.
Ronnie?
Yeah, agreed with that. I think the different pricing models can give you access or not to different models, as Alexander already said. And I'm not sure this is... It's been a long time since I upgraded to the Pro version, but I think the free version is limited to not be able to use the newest models altogether. And there is also other AIs that can do coding very well. Gemini is a really good for coding. And when I compare the Pro version of ChatGPT and Gemini, I tend to see that Gemini is giving me a little bit more understandable coding examples or tidbits that comes out of it. I'm a coder myself, but I've stopped coding for a long time. So using these tools for helping me or assisting me to do the things that I would like to do is really helpful. So you can look to other engines as well. I would definitely try a few different ones.
Guy?
Yeah, I learned this one from Jonas as we were doing some work in a Zoom meeting. He brought up T3.chat, and we were kind of surprised to be able to go back and look at what ChatGPT came up with versus Gemini. And at the time, before DeepSeek really became a thing, he ran the same prompt in DeepSeek, and it was giving us some amazing results. And that was even before, all the big press went out about DeepSeek. So pay the $8 a month. I do pay for ChatGPT because I love the app on my phone. So T3.chat's only $8 a month, and it does give you the pro version of ChatGPT. So I would be looking at T3.chat because it gives you Gemini, Claude, as well as ChatGPT and Mini, and it's really cool to be able to do a prompt, hit refresh in a different. So you don't have to type it in again. You just hit refresh with the new model, and it outputs the code. So very cool.
Chris?
I will second Ronnie's suggestion for using Gemini, and Ken Jordan also suggested using Gemini. That's what I use. I'm not sure if I'm doing it the same way as everyone else, but for me, I'm using it to just like little functions, little bits and pieces of my code, not to just generate the whole program. And it's been super helpful, and it's been pretty reliable. And as Ken had mentioned in the chat, when you get errors, put them back into the chat. And when it's giving you things you don't want or you don't think is correct, feed that back in, and it'll oftentimes, oh yes, you're right. That is I was misunderstanding something, and usually that comes from you didn't give it all the information from the get-go, and so it is making up what it thinks you want. So start with good questions.
Yeah, when you're interacting with all of these models, also remember that you've got to treat it like a conversation. It's not I'm going to give you a request and then you're going to give me the final answer. It's very much more a back and forth. And sometimes it's going to get it right. Sometimes it's going to get it wrong. And as Alex likes to say, it's the average of all of us. So when you can give it context within your prompting to narrow the perspective, some of those hallucinations are going to go down. Also, if you have a very specific programming task that you're trying to get accomplished, if you make a custom model, like you go into a Notebook LM and upload the documentation for a specific language or for a specific project, you're instantly narrowing the lens through which it can start to make suggestions, which is hopefully going to get you moving a lot quicker. Also, if you pay for something like a GitHub Copilot, which has OpenAI technology on the back end, obviously, but it's through Microsoft, you're going to be, because you're right there within your IDE, you're going to be locked into the I am coding. Like, this is the context that we're having this entire conversation, and that changes the level to which you're getting, I think, quality output. And I've talked to some programmers who treat it like that assistant, who treat it truly in the sense of the word like a Copilot, and see pretty intense results. Coming up on Office Hours, we've got our live-only shows over the weekend, so that's our members-only section. Saturday's Q&A, Sunday's introspection. And so that's where we talk a little bit more about office hours, a little bit more philosophical. It's a different kind of conversation, but highly suggest you join that because it's a lot of fun. Also on Saturday at 8:30, we've got our new panelist meeting, and then 9 is the panelist meeting. Right after that, that's Pacific time. So if you're interested in sharing some of your life experience on the panel and contributing to the community that way, we'd appreciate it. Check us out on Saturday after the show. Next question.
This one's from Douglas Carmichael. Alex, you mentioned using an LED wall for outdoor film screenings. Would there be LED walls with pixel pitch low enough for a cinema quality image?
Alex?
Yeah, it just depends on how far away you are. So I mean, a lot of these are. I mean, outdoor. The challenge really gets into with an outdoor screen is if the pitch gets too small, there's not enough air movement, and it can turn into a sail. So you have to be kind of careful of where you put those. A lot of times people end up putting them against some kind of wall so that there's not air on both sides of them. But this is, as you start to get that pixel pitch lower, you start to worry about those kinds of things. So a lot of times with a concert, you might see a pitch of 5 or 7 millimeters, on the big ones that are behind the bands because they need airflow going through them. Otherwise, they'll collapse. So those are the kind of things that you think about. We see a lot of LED walls sitting in the 2.6 to 3.2 range that are outdoor or indoor. We don't usually see them get much more dense than that because of the issues, and also they get really expensive quickly. But at a distance, they are very bright. We've seen, Courtney and I went to see SEMTI do tests at the Amazon theaters with Samsungs, and I think that those pitches weren't more than 2.6, and they looked really sharp. It's a big screen.
1.3, yeah.
What? Sorry, say it again.
I think the 8K screen was like 1.7.
Was it 1.3? I thought that they were remarkably high pitch for what they were. Like I looked when they said the numbers, I just remember them being really hot. Like, wow, I can't believe that's where we're at right now with those. But yeah, the 8 might have been smaller, but they both looked really good.
Ronnie?
Yeah, I was just thinking of, because the other one was a kind of blow-up display. And the problem is not regarding wind, it's not less of a problem. You still have to have a big type of trusses and a solid foundation, even if you go with a LED wall. We have each summer we have a kids festival where we rent a big LED-based screen. It doesn't have the full HD resolution, but that doesn't matter for kids at least. And the trusses that are put in place by the riggers, it's humongous. It's more costly than the LED screen itself, kind of. So just to make sure that everything is safe and solid, you have to have a big truss system to secure this as well.
Next question.
Raina Doppelpopoulos in Scituate. How do you get that most true, most excellent duodecahedral sound? We really want to hear even the tiniest subtleties, and heard this is the way to go. Thanks.
Alex?
I've never heard of this as the way to go for the finest subtleties. Usually these are used as test signals. So, they're testing, what the room is like. They're for spatial audio testing or even just room testing, RT60 testing, or different measurements. But they're usually, my understanding is generally these are they're really more designed around generating test signals to test the space than to actually listen to.
Courtney?
Yeah, if you delve into the mathematics of a dodecahedron, it's unique in a number of ways. A dodecahedron is a 12-sided, made up of 12 pentagons, equilateral pentagons. So each side of each pentagon is the same length. And so when you assemble them all together in this sphere-type shape, it has the unique value that an infinite number of lines from any of the vertices or any of the sides can be drawn to any of the other sides without crossing any of the other sides or vertices. So there's direct line of sight when you maybe generate or capture your sound at the vertices or the center of each of these pentagons. You don't end up with anything blocking anything else. So it's unique shape that prevents sound signals which travel in a straight line from being interfered with by any of the other transducers or anything else put away.
Next question.
Paul Buchanan in Columbus, Ohio. I just learned that Companion can use a Blackmagic Smart VideoHub control panel as a control surface. Has anyone done this?
Alex?
I don't know of anyone who has. Usually they're trying to get rid of the control surface as opposed to adding the control surface, but it would give you better keys than what they had there. So theoretically, you could, this is just it's just calls back and forth. It's generating calls. It's getting calls. There's no reason why you couldn't convert those calls in either direction to commands inside of Companion.
If you're finding office hours valuable, there are a couple ways you can help. Of course, you can like and subscribe to the channel. We like that. And we have a great volunteer community here as well. So not only during the show, but around the show, keeping us organized. And there are opportunities there at officehours.global/volunteer. And finally, we're 100% volunteer, but we're also 100% volunteer funded. We're a 501c3 nonprofit, and we are funded by everybody's generosity there as well. So if you'd like to chip in, officehours.global/donate, we'd certainly appreciate it. Next question.
Ola A. in Kent, UK from the QR code is asking, hey, well, asking again since vMix guys are around today, could you give a brief overview of how vMix works in the cloud? Any helpful links to read more about this?
Chris?
Well, for starters, the cloud is just somebody else's computer. So vMix in the cloud is just vMix on somebody else's computer. And typically, I think when it's talked about in the office hours scenario, you're talking about running vMix in AWS or maybe in Azure and something like that. For me personally, I kind of roll my own cloud. So I work on a university, and so I have a university campus. And so I have these vMix boxes on campus, but I can be off campus, remote into them using splashtop, using Companion, using VPNs and Tailscale and all kinds of different ways. I can control those and run broadcast remotely on a vMix that is somewhere other than where I'm at. And I think when we're talking about vMix in the cloud, generally in office hours, we're basically doing that same thing, except for instead of being on campus, it is up in AWS somewhere, and where you are remoting into that AWS instance and controlling vMix remotely. And that's great for things like Zoom, where all your contributions are already kind of on the internet anyways, and so they're just going into that AWS instance, and so there's no reason, you don't need to bring them down to you to push them back up and so forth. That's kind of one of the main use cases of kind of vMix in the cloud.
Guy?
Yeah, a few years ago, there was a great video that was put up by Opalcast, because in the COVID days, they had this need where they wanted to put on this gaming esports show that had to go on, and everybody was at home. So they have a great diagram that's one of the best overviews. And basically, you can see here in the middle, it says AWS vMix 1, and that's the switcher. And then they're using Nimble to bring in as well as bring out the feed. So when you think about it, it's really, how do I get it in, how do I cut it, and how do I get it out? So that's really what you got to think about. And you can get your footage in through something like SRT. We use UpAFan Pearls or other hardware to do that. You could also do it with software. A lot of people are now using Zoom because there's the integration, and then there's NDI or NDI Bridge, and then you're cutting. And this doesn't have to be vMix. Think of it as you could use OBS. You can use we're using Carbonite Code as well, and there's other software switchers out there. And then how do you get it back out, and where do you want it to go to? Because that's the part that's the stability piece that I love about the cloud is I could be somewhere with iffy bandwidth, and I know that my cloud instance is rock solid because they've got stable 3,000 megabit per second internet connection when you run SpeedTest, and that's just a joy. Just knowing that your production is safe, and it gives you a sense of just the show's not going to get halted by power, bandwidth. It'll be something else. So using somebody else's hardware just means that you've got all that tech that you used to have to worry about where did I do an update? Because these are Windows Server machines, not Windows Home or Windows Pro, you don't have to worry about these strange updates stopping you in the middle of the show. So that's a couple of the big benefits, and hopefully that's a good overview. And I'll put a link in the chat to this running vMix on AWS Opalcast YouTube video that gives this diagram and this high level overview.
Chris?
Yeah, I thought I'd show just a quick. This is kind of one of my broadcasts for baseball. We have our cameras and our play-by-play person are another venue. We're shipping those signals through the cloud back into our control room, and then remoting into the control room from another third location to control that. And so just kind of another example of kind of how you might do like cloud infrastructure with vMix.
Next question.
Raina Doppelpopoulos in Situate is asking, and this is a QR code question, looking for Windows software similar to Loopback on Macs that can internally route audio from different programs to different outputs. We want to monitor splashtop in headphones and send presentation audio to sound system, Dante or Mac, not an option.
Go ahead, Chris.
So 2 options. The super simple option, but not as flexible, is Mixline from Logitech. It's kind of the same concept. It has some limits, but it should be able to do what you're asking it to do. The next other option would be VB Audio's VB Matrix, which can do that. It's super convoluted, and I just needed to mix like 2 channels, and it took me wrapping your head around how it all works it's not very straightforward, but it will absolutely do what you want to do there as well.
Courtney?
Yeah, I was just going to mention the VB Audio's Voice Meter Potato and the Matrix. They have a number of tools that look like this that are virtual sound mixers and virtual input channels that let you. They have Banana, Potato, V-Band, and Matrix that allow you to do all this stuff. It's Nagware. Free to download and use, try out, but then you have to buy a license, I think, eventually to run it. But it's quite comprehensive, probably a little bit more than the stuff that's available with the Hijack and Loopback.
Next question.
Questions from Zach Stallsmith in Chautauqua, New York. I had my vMix computer experience audio hiccups with Dante and USB, analog, NDI cameras disconnected. CPU spiked to 100%. I checked logs and Task Manager, but nothing obvious stood out, so I spent the night building out a new system. Thoughts?
Guy?
So in the olden days, you used to have an integrator that would set up these systems for you. And just because you can install vMix on an antiquated system doesn't mean that you should. So I'm guessing 100% that this does not meet the minimum requirements. If it does, the things that you need to double check is in the performance tab. What graphics adapter do you have? Like this, I know it's hard to read because my computer's such a high resolution monitor. But basically, you need to make sure that your graphics adapter is selected. And in the NVIDIA control panel, make sure that your vMix select, where it says select a program, you can actually spec vMix as one in the basic instruction. So if those 2 are done and you have a strong enough system, you shouldn't have any problems. I did ask in the chat if Zach could give us more information, but I'm almost positive because the only time that I've seen this, vMix is so solid on a decent system, and the minimum specs are pasted in the chat so you guys can see what you should at least on a minimum be using.
Thank you, everyone, so much for being here today. To our panelists and to our special guests, Andy and Jonathan, it was a privilege getting to spend the Friday morning getting smarter. Thanks to everyone sharing their life experience. It's a pretty amazing thing. Also to our back-end crew who works not only during the show, but also around the show to keep us organized, keep us moving forward. We appreciate you as well. And finally, thanks to the producers for asking such great questions. Keep us going every day. Can't do the show without you, and we had to send a couple back. If they were Makana questions, they'll be in your notes. If you have a question that you submitted via the QR code, look out for those as we start the shows next week on Monday. Tlaloc traversal today, if we would have had to travel around and ask all these questions in person, you'd have 53,000 miles. That's 85,000 kilometers, 420 million bananas for scale. We'll see you in After Hours. Thanks, everybody.
And we can play with the graphics.
I know. I thought, I was like, so when can I play with it?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I need to block a day, or at least an afternoon, and just have unstructured fiddle time because...
Yeah, 100%. See you guys.
Cheers. I'm going to go put down some dirt and roll out some sod and pray for rain. Happy Good Friday, everyone. Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Have a good one, folks.
Do-do, the world was yours to get out. Thanks, everybody.